Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 28, Frankenstein. As always, before we get into this very spooky episode, let's talk about our next episode. On Tuesday, November 6th, we're going to tackle some lighter content. We watched the Disney classic Pete's Dragon, as well as their 2016 remake, which will come out on top. Mickey Rooney singing, or Robert Redford being handsome and distinguished. Listen to our next episode to find out. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. And with that, on with the show. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. Welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. My name is Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw.
Oh, and welcome.
Happy Halloween!
Welcome to the spooky episode.
Spoopy.
It's our first Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Like, it's not our, it's like our, I remember last year when we started the podcast,
Yeah.
like our second episode was coming out around Halloween. And we're like, we should do a Halloween one. No, it's episode number 2.
Well, it was Jurassic Park, so it had monsters in it.
I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah.
People die gruesome deaths.
Just so gruesome.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I guess we're continuing that.
It's a tradition. Twice makes a tradition.
And we're talking about a goddamn stone cold horror classic.
Yes, one of the two.
Yes. There are only 2. We don't really see the show going more than another year or 2, so this works fine for us.
It's great.
What are we talking about this week?
We're talking about Frankenstein.
Oh, that's where I didn't know that's how it was pronounced.
Yeah.
By Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like, so I want to get this just kind of out there right off the bat. I want to make an assumption.
Okay.
I don't think this is a super unfair assumption to make.
Okay.
I think, would you agree it is extremely well known?
It is well known.
In the world.
Yes.
And if you were to walk up to most people on the street and you were to say, if I ask you to think of Frankenstein, can you think of something?
Yes.
What percentage of people do you think would say, yes, I can?
Like 100%.
Right.
Some of them would push their glasses up their nose and say, well, actually.
And then what would he say after that? But this is kind of the second part of my question. Well, actually, I have a second part to this question.
Okay.
The second part of the question is, of all those people who picture something, what percentage of those people do you think picture the original book?
Not a high percentage.
Like, I'll put myself out there. I've read the book. I
Right.
read the book in high school. I've read it several times over the course of years. I love the original book. But if you asked me to picture Frankenstein, I'm going to picture, like, Boris Karloff.
Right. Totally.
Like-
Yeah, I definitely had a few moments. Again, I also had read the book before, but I definitely had a few moments reading where I was like, what the hell is this?
This is not what happens.
What the fuck does this have to do with the monster?
I just assume a lot of people have not read this book.
Yes.
In relation to in relation to people who know about Frankenstein.
Or at least haven't retained it, because I think a lot of us had to read it in high school.
Yes.
But yeah.
Did you have to read it in high school? I did.
I don't think I did.
Oh, okay.
I meant us in the general sense of, like, you know, we are the world.
Sure.
We are a family.
Yeah. I want to go back to high school for a second because I had to read this book. I'm actually super thankful for how I had to read this book at the beginning. So I read this book in AP British Literature. I think it's a really good book to introduce if you're like a high school teacher introducing like British literature to the kids.
Because of the implications.
What?
I meant to say context and it came out wrong.
Okay. So what about the context do you think makes it good to bring up?
It's associated with more about that literary period than just its single author.
Right. So how did it come to be?
Well, apparently it was a ghost story competition that Mary Shelley had with Lord Byron and some other guy and her husband.
She did a good job.
Yeah, she was only 19.
She wrote a really good book.
Yeah.
So this was published in, what is it,
1818.
1818?
It is the 200-year anniversary of this novel, Frankenstein, by Mary Shelley.
So, Mary, we're speaking to you from 200 years in the future, and we're just saying you did a good job.
It was great.
You did a really good job. And don't be down about the fact that no one actually knows that you wrote it, because in 5 years, the book will be republished under your actual name instead of anonymously.
I'm sure she'd be happy to hear it.
You knew that, right?
No.
The book was published anonymously in 1818.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No one knew she wrote it until
I thought
1823.
you meant 5 years from now, and when you were saying no one knows you wrote it, I was like, no, I think that's pretty well known.
No, I'm
that Mary
speaking to
Shelley
her.
wrote Frankenstein.
I'm speaking to her in 1818.
I see. But she didn't die in 1880. Never mind. It doesn't matter. She was alive when they republished the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later credited as Mrs. Percy Shelley.
We'll get to that. But we got to talk about this book. Oh, no. The one thing I did want to say really quickly about like when it was introduced to me, the one thing I will say about how thankful I am to Mr. Ingraham from my high school for introducing us to Frankenstein in this way, which is this. When we all read it, he showed us all an illustrated edition of Frankenstein with illustrations by a guy named Bernie Wrightson. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. It's my favorite edition of the book because I love the illustrations. And the thing that I really like about it is the monster looks absolutely nothing like the kind of the Boris Karloff version of the monster.
Yeah, he just looks like a big man.
And it was great to be able to read the book with that image in our heads because we were able to read it completely divorced from the like pop culture image of Frankenstein and be able to actually read the book as a standalone horror story.
Totally.
So I'm really thankful for that because I loved the book and I really loved rereading it.
Yeah.
You didn't read it in high school, you said, though.
No, I read it like as an adult and liked it, and I read it again and liked it. It's really good. It's a good read. It's compelling. Like, it's pretty short. You kind of don't want to put it down.
Yeah.
It's very compelling.
Like, this was one of the first times that we'd read a book for the show, and I literally was, like, late to things. You were saying, like, come down for dinner, and I would say, like, well, I just have to finish this chapter really quickly.
Well,
like, it's super fun.
It is fun, and the funny thing is, too, like, as you read it, there are, at least for me, there were a few moments where I was like, oh, yep, I can see where a 19-year-old girl wrote this book. Like
what?
Just some of the moments were, like, really emotional, like when Frankenstein is talking about like the deaths of his family members and it's like sobs and tears racked my body and it just sounds like fan fiction.
Yeah.
And just I really enjoyed that like 19-year-old girls are sort of dramatic in the fiction that they write throughout history, even 200 years ago.
We should probably read the back of this book.
We don't have it.
No, but I found a synopsis online.
Excellent.
So I'm going to read this right here. Here's the synopsis of the book Frankenstein by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley.
It's really hard not to say Frankenstein.
I will. Obsessed with the secret of creation, Swiss scientist Dr. Victor Frankenstein cobbles together a body he's determined to bring to life. And one fateful night, he does. When the creature opens his eyes, the doctor is repulsed. His vision of perfection is, in fact, a hideous monster. Dr. Frankenstein abandons his creation, but the monster won't be ignored, setting in motion a chain of violence and terror that shadows Victor to his death.
Yeah.
I want to give props to whoever wrote this synopsis.
Where did you find this?
This is on Amazon.
Oh, okay, great.
Just the Amazon synopsis. I love this because it's clearly written by someone who's like, I'm going to, as quickly as possible, show people that there's more to this story than they think there is.
Yes.
So, like, right off the bat, Swiss scientist Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now people know that he's Swiss.
Yeah.
He cobbles together a body. When the creature opens his eyes, the doctor is repulsed.
Yes.
Which is completely antithetical to the kind of pop culture version.
Yeah, he's not screaming, it's alive!
Like, he's not excited about it.
No, he, like, literally runs away and shuts the door.
Yeah, basically. He abandons his creation, but the monster won't be ignored, setting in motion a chain of violence and terror that shadows Victor to his death.
Yeah.
So Victor dies.
He does.
We know this from the synopsis. And also, I really like this, but the monster won't be ignored, which implies kind of a higher level of thinking than I think people would normally ascribe to the, quote unquote, the Frankenstein monster.
Yeah, well, if we're getting into it, this was the thing that I loved, and I kept quoting to you from the book, like the one line that was very specific, which was that, so basically, as you just read, he creates the monster, he realizes it's alive, he lets it loose in his apartment, and like literally runs away and locks the door and like goes home.
He treats the monster like a spider you find in your apartment.
Yeah.
Where you just, you see it in the bathroom. So
and
you shut
like,
the bathroom door.
Nope.
You nope the fuck out.
Yeah.
And then you come back the next day and it's gone.
It's
so
gone.
You think everything must be fine.
Exactly. So he came back. The monster's gone. He's like, okay, great. And he doesn't see it again for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Like a number of years. So he meets up with the monster who he is pretty sure has killed his little brother.
Yeah.
And this is Victor Frankenstein's words to the monster. It's a paragraph, so bear with me.
Okay.
Devil, I exclaimed. Do you dare approach me? And do not you fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head? Begone, vile insect, or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered. Now, guess what the monster's line is?
Well, so from every movie I've ever seen of the monster, I think I know what the monster's first line is.
Okay, go ahead.
So here's what I think it is. Was it something like that?
You're not super close.
Oh, okay.
This is the monster's response to that torrent of words.
Okay.
I expected this reception.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Said the demon. The monster in the book, his voice to me sounds like Igor.
A little bit.
Yeah.
He's very depressed.
All men hate the wretched.
But this gets a big thing out right now, which is that the monster of the book, he is like goddamn eloquent.
Yeah, he's very eloquent.
He's just as eloquent as everyone else.
Yes.
Like in her version of the story, which is, I'll say this, the version of the story.
Yeah,
like,
I think you have to say that.
He's a character just like everyone else is a character. He has things to say just like every character does.
He tells a good chunk of the book in first person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the biggest shock to me when I was a
Yeah.
kid. Like when I was in high school and I read this book for the first time, finding out that the monster was actually like articulate was shocking.
Yeah.
And it's made watching every single version of the story interesting because if anyone ever shows the character as anything less than articulate, what they're doing is they're referencing Boris Karloff. They're not referencing the book.
That's right. That's right.
And we're going to get to Karloff in a little bit.
Yeah.
But we should talk about the book for a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
So right off the bat, we have a framing device.
Yes.
We meet someone who very well may be the main character of the book.
We don't know.
No, we don't. And that is Captain Robert Walton.
Yes. Who is writing a letter to his sister because he's on an Arctic expedition.
So can you please walk me and our listeners through all of the different levels of how we, the reader, are hearing this story?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to. Okay. Captain Walton is on an Arctic expedition. They are stuck in the ice. He is writing a letter to his sister who is back in England, but fears the letter may never reach her.
Okay.
As he sits to write his letter, he is called up to the deck by a disturbance, and they have encountered a man on a sleigh in the middle of the ice, and it's very weird because nobody should be there.
Yep. This is also, are you talking about the first man or the second man?
The first man.
Because the first man is off in the distance and he's giant.
Right. Okay, they see the giant off in the distance. Never mind that part.
Yep.
They encounter a second man who's a regular man, and they invite him on board the boat. So this is Captain Walton writing down what this guy has to say. This is Dr. Victor Frankenstein. So he begins to tell him the story of his life. Oh my goodness, it's a long story.
Oh, quite a bit. Quite a bit.
There's very much about his background and growing up in Switzerland and all of his learnings about medieval medicine.
Yeah, blah, 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 made a monster,
blah, 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 made a monster, blah, blah, blah. Then he encounters the monster, and then the monster tells him a long story in first person. So that's Victor Frankenstein relating the monster story to Captain Walton, who's writing it to his sister.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes back to Frankenstein's narration. Then it goes back to Walton. And then the book ends because Frankenstein dies.
It's many different levels.
It's so many levels.
And I remember I got super excited when I was reading this and I called you in and we were talking about it. And you kind of took the air out of my sails a little bit because I said, I love the implications of this because it really sets up Frankenstein as an unreliable narrator. Mm-hmm. And we're not really expected to take everything he's saying at face value. Mm-hmm. And you brought up a really, really good point, which is, well, the way this is written is really more of kind of how books were written at the time. It's called like an epistolary.
Yeah, epistolary.
Yeah. Which is not something I was familiar with, but I didn't really know was a thing with like a name. And so I was kind of down about that because I found out, oh no, he is actually a reliable narrator.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's how books were written.
Yeah, but you can interpret it any way you want.
That's how I choose to interpret it.
Go for it.
I choose to interpret anything that someone is telling another person in this book. I choose to interpret as at least 10% bullshit.
Yeah, that's fair.
I love the way that Frankenstein presents himself to Walton.
Yeah.
He thinks it's okay to present himself as this very thoughtful, very emotional person. He's an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Frankenstein's the bad guy.
My favorite thing. So I think we should talk about who the characters are before we move on to the movies.
Let's run through them all really quick.
Yeah. So there's Victor Frankenstein, who grew up in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
He had a mother and a father.
Yes.
And he had 2 little brothers, and he also had sort of an adopted sister who was like a cousin of theirs, and they all grew up together. And his cousin Elizabeth, from their earliest childhood, they had been destined to be wed to each other. That was the intention of their parents.
Right.
Oh, and he also had a best friend named Henry.
Yep.
Henry Clerval.
Mm-hmm.
We see the name Henry assigned to various characters.
Originally, it is his very best friend,
buddy,
Henry Clerval.
Oh, he never really went to school. He studied at home, like with his dad, but his dad didn't have very good oversight, I guess, in what he was studying, and so he just kind of discovered the writings of all of these like Roman and medieval natural philosophers, which is what they used to call scientists before science was a thing.
Right.
And he became very fascinated with like the connection between the mind and the soul and the body and all of this stuff that they were writing about, and thought, I guess, that was like the most current up-to-date science. And so he went off to university and began to study with like science professors because he was interested in becoming a doctor. And like on his first day of class, he was like, yes, but according to Marcus Agrippa. And the professors were like, what are you talking about?
Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, but also before that, he had told his dad he was into Marcus Agrippa. And there's this whole explanation as to like how his dad could have phrased better, explaining to him that Marcus Agrippa was like not a thing anymore. But instead he was like, that's terrible trash. You shouldn't read that. And he's like, if only my dad had taken the time to explain to me calmly and rationally, like I would never have gone down this path, but it's all my dad's fault, really.
Frankenstein in this book is like the poster child for the villain is the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
Which has come up on this show before and will come up again, I'm sure. He thinks everything he did was fine. Even when he did something bad, his reaction is, well, man, the one time I did something bad, Well,
and also it's like it's always someone else's fault.
Totally.
So he blames his dad, he blames his professor, he blames his professors, he goes off to college, and he decides that for some reason, there's sort of some hand-wavy things. He wants to build a man, a person.
He wants to create life.
Yeah. And the thing that
Where's the fetus going to gestate?
Where's the fetus going to gestate?
In a box.
You're going to keep it in a box? But the thing that I really like about it is that the actual science of how he did this thing, like think about what you think of when you think of Frankenstein in his laboratory, right? There's all this equipment and there's lightning and there's this and
electricity is somehow involved,
and there's this and there's that. Literally in the book it's like, I'm not going to tell you how I did it because I don't want anybody else to ever do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's how it's explained. The author really hand waves it away. Like somehow, what with one thing and another, I managed to make this monster.
It's the consequences of what he did that are more important to Shelley than how he did it.
Oh no, that's definitely true. I just think it's funny.
So one other thing I want to say about Frankenstein, because I don't think there's much else to say about the character. I think you painted a picture of him very well.
Thank you.
Just one thing I want to say. What is the title of this book?
Frankenstein.
Or?
The Modern Prometheus.
Who is Frankenstein.
Yes.
Like Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus, the Greek titan who created man and then stole fire from the gods to give it to man.
Yes.
I bring that up for a reason. It will come up later.
Okay.
But Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus. So who else do we have? Give me some quick versions of... So Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, who is his fiance, sort of...
No, fiance, and then they get married.
And then they get married. And my favorite thing...
She makes it, right? She makes it to the end of the book?
She does not.
Oh, no.
Well, so there's the monster, of course.
Yes.
And at one point, he threatens Frankenstein. He says, I will be with you on your wedding night.
Yeah.
It's very threatening.
It's like the best line of the book.
It's great. This is what I was going to say before about my favorite thing about Frankenstein. His reaction is like, I immediately thought of Elizabeth and how sad she would be when the monster inevitably killed me. How terrible for her. And it's like, no, dude, that's not what he means. He means he's going to kill her. And it like never crosses his mind that Elizabeth is his intended victim.
Literally until it happens.
Until it happens.
And it's like, as he hears her scream, he goes, oh, you fool.
Yes.
How did you not know?
But I just love the self-centeredness of like, oh, I just thought how hard my death would be on Elizabeth.
So she doesn't make it, is what you're telling me?
She doesn't make it.
Okay, so then there's his friend Henry.
Henry, who nurses him back to health when he has brain fever.
Okay, who clearly makes it to the end of the book.
Does not, because the monster eats him.
What?
He just eats all these people.
What are you talking about? Did you read it? No, he strangles him. Strangles him on the coast.
I want to say he eats him.
And he literally frames him for murder.
Yeah, he does frame him for the murder of his best friend.
Okay, so there's Henry, his best friend, who beyond being his best friend and kind of again all this stuff, he's not for it. He's again it.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's not much to say about Henry.
He's a very loyal friend. Then there's his dad, who I kind of think never really knows about any of this. His dad is like just crushed with tragedy.
Well, I mean, he makes it to the end of the book, right?
No, he dies.
He dies too?
Everybody dies.
Oh my God, he dies from...
sad.
He dies from sad?
Yeah.
Oh no, an acute case of sad?
Then there's his little brother, his youngest brother. He's got two little brothers, but the youngest one, the baby.
Oh, okay. He clearly makes it to the end of the book.
No, the monster eats him.
You're actually saying inaccurate things right now. He's like the first to die, right?
Yeah, he definitely bites it. The monster strangles him. And then Justine, their faithful housemaid, is framed and executed for the murder of this baby.
You didn't let me do my joke about how she makes it to the end of the book.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You told me to get through this quickly.
So she dies.
She dies.
Is there anyone else? Like, who else? Well, Frankenstein dies.
Well, there's the monster, and then there's his friends, Agatha and the old blind man, and...
None of them die.
No, I don't think they die. They just run away.
The DeLacy's?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the other thing I love. Like, the monster learns how to speak from this French family whose house he is, like, holed up.
Stalking.
He's basically stalking them, and he learns to speak from them.
But, like, for 2 years.
Yeah. I love the fact that the monster, the Frankenstein fucking monster, when he speaks... It is in French.
Yes. Well, because when he approaches the blind, finally he gets up his courage, right, to approach the blind man who he's been studying, because he thinks, well, maybe when because he can't see me, he won't be so frightened. And the blind man says to him something like, "Oh, from your language, I believe you are a countryman of mine."
It's great.
So it's clear he's speaking French.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite thing.
Yes.
So those are all the people. I feel like that's like the bones of it.
Yeah.
So like walking through the plot, like Frankenstein, he's young, he creates the monster runs away. He's like, well, that's fine. I'm sure everything's fine. And then he finds out that his younger brother has been strangled.
Yes.
And so he goes back to Switzerland. He goes back to Geneva, right?
Yeah.
And that sets off...
No. Geneva is where he's studying. He lives in Lucerne.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So he goes home, and they find out that Justine has been framed for the murder. And he, like, as soon as he hears that his younger brother, William, is dead...
It's like, it's a monster.
It's the monster. This is my fault. It's
Which is true. This is accurate.
It's my fault, but of course he doesn't tell anyone about it because no one, quote unquote, no one would believe him.
Yes.
So that's why he doesn't tell anybody.
Ugh.
So then Justine is like the murder suspect because the monster framed her.
Yes.
And he quote unquote can't say anything because no one would believe him.
Yeah.
And she gets hanged.
Whatever.
I always say it wrong.
It's okay.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Then what happens after that? Then he like meets the monster.
He meets the monster, and then he tells the monster to go away, and then he goes on vacation for a really long time. Oh, because then the monster says, "You need to make me a wife."
Right. That's what the whole thing is. The monster says, "You created me," and then the monster tells him his whole story.
Yes, and then he says, "I'm lonely forever."
Yeah, I'm lonely forever. You're the worst, and basically tells him like, "I had the chance to be a good person, but." You abandoned me, and that made me a bad person.
Yes.
So I thought if I'm going to be a villain, I may as well be like the villain.
Yeah.
So that's why I killed your little brother, dude. That's why I did that thing.
Yes.
I'm bad because you made me bad.
To his credit, it sounds like the little boy was a real brat.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter at all. He didn't need to do that.
No.
He's a villain because he wants to be, and he thinks it's the right thing.
Yes.
And he basically, he blackmails Frankenstein into making him a wife.
Yes.
By saying, here's the deal, dude. If you don't make me a woman, I'm going to be the worst and I'm going to kill everyone.
Yeah.
So you need to do this for me. And Frankenstein thinks he's on this really high... He thinks he has the moral high ground here. And so he starts to make the woman and then destroys what he's making.
Well, he has this like long dark night of the soul. He's on like this tiny island in Scotland somewhere.
Oh yeah, he's just gone on his tour through the British Isles.
Yeah. No, he goes on vacation with Henry.
Yep.
To make a monster. But my favorite part about that sequence was like some real bad women's anatomy, because.
Which is weird.
Yeah. Well, at one point, he has this like long dark night of the soul and he's like tortured and he thinks like, oh, he told me that if I make him this woman, they'll just go away together and never bother anyone. But what if I'm wrong and they don't keep that promise? Then there's just going to be two of them. And oh my God, what if they have children? And then that thought is the impetus that makes him destroy, all his work up to that point. And I'm reading this going like, you could just, you're literally constructing her body from parts. You can make it without a uterus.
Just don't put in that part.
Just don't put in that part. Like, you can do what you want. Do you not know how this works? And clearly he does not know how this works.
Well, clearly Mary Shelley doesn't know how this works.
And also the fact that he's concerned about this means that he did make the monster with a functioning reproductive system. Which is a little bit scary to think about.
We're given to understand. Yeah. So he destroys the body. The monster goes, okay, fuck you. I'm going to be the supervillain.
Yeah.
Immediately kills Henry.
Yes.
Frankenstein gets framed for that murder, but he gets released.
Because his dad comes to help him.
Yeah.
Some situation.
He calls his dad. They go back to Switzerland. He marries Elizabeth.
Yes.
Just like the monster promised, he is with them on his wedding night.
Elizabeth dies.
Yep. And then... basically after that, that's kind of where the end game happens, and the monster runs up to the frozen north and Frankenstein follows him.
Yes.
Right?
And then, yeah, I think so.
I don't think anything else happens after that, because everyone's dead by this point.
And then Frankenstein dies on the boat.
Yep.
Yep.
And then Walton walks into his cabin, the cabin where Frankenstein was, sees the monster over him.
The monster says, hello.
Yeah, the monster basically says, like, this is my creator. I am a mistake. I will go off to die so no one knows about me.
Yes.
And the book ends with him going off into the distance.
And then the ice breaks up and Walton is able to get home.
Right.
So really it's a happy ending for one person. And presumably his sister, who we think is probably going to be happy to see him.
I mean, his sister's been reading all these letters the whole time.
Just imagine her face.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, he's going to get home and she's just going to be staring at him going like, what the fuck did you tell me?
She hasn't been reading the letters the whole time because there was no way for a letter to get back to her. These letters all would have gotten to her with her brother.
Shit, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in for a story.
They didn't have email, yeah.
She's in for a story.
Yeah.
And I'm given to understand that she's the one that wrote all this stuff down.
Yeah.
So we're hearing about all of this stuff like fourth hand.
Yeah.
I like this book,
It's great. It's fun.
I think the monster, he's such a fun character. He's such an interesting character. And like, it's a horror story.
Yeah.
This is legitimately scary. What's the scariest part of the book for you? Like, does any of this book scare you? Because there's one part of this book that like legit scares me.
Tell me about it.
It is how physically imposing the monster is.
Yeah, he's really scary.
Because the one thing we all know from every version of the story that's ever been told, like, I'm going to ask you this. In every version that you've ever seen, is Frankenstein's monster strong?
Yes.
Is Frankenstein's monster fast?
Yes. No, he's slow.
Exactly. Like, every version we've ever seen, he's this big lumbering thing. It's like zombies. Like, well, as long as I can run faster than the monster, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But in the book, the monster is really fast.
Well, because he built him to be like a Superman.
Yeah.
Like that was the whole point.
He's terrifying. Like he literally is more physically imposing than any man and any person who exists.
Yes.
So there's like the scene when he first confronts the monster, and the way it's written in the book of the monster, like he sees the monster off in the distance up in the mountains, and the monster charges towards him. And there's this image of the monster like crossing miles in minutes.
Yeah.
Towards him so quickly.
Yeah.
That scared the shit out of me when I first read it.
Yeah.
And that's like a terrifying aspect of the monster that I've never seen in any other version. It bums me out.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I found this book scary.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is a really good scary book.
It's very scary.
It's spooky.
Spooky. Happy Halloween. They made some movies out of this this weird book.
They did.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about them? Do you have anything else to say about the book?
I don't. I think
right.
it's great, and I think everyone should read it if you haven't.
Yeah, why not?
Super fun.
All right.
And look up that illustrated version. It's very, very good.
Cool.
So we're going to talk about a bunch of these adaptations. I think it would be a good idea to, let's talk about kind of how we're going to talk about this stuff.
You go for it.
So we're going to talk about kind of 3 different movies that I would say laid the groundwork for modern interpretations of the Frankenstein monster.
Mm-hmm.
Really, one did. And they were made in the 30s and 50s.
Yeah.
So we've got to talk about Frankenstein, Universal's Frankenstein, 1931.
Yep.
Then 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein. And then we're going to talk about the Hammer horror, The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957.
Yep.
Then we've got some other versions to talk about.
Some assorted versions.
So just assorted things. Some that we watched all the way through, some that we did not.
Some that one of us did and one of us didn't.
But there is one, especially film adaptation, that is regarded as the most book faithful and accurate, and that is Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
1998.
I want to be clear. In my head, the title has always been Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's like Francis Ford Coppola's Mario Puzo's The Godfather.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
From 1994.
Yeah.
And that's how I think we'll end things.
Yes.
Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great.
Let's talk about 1931's Frankenstein.
Well, my favorite part of this was the opening credit. Because at the top of the screen in large letters was splashed from the novel by Mrs. Percy B. Shelley. And I went, what? She doesn't even get her own name? I was so mad.
They make up for it in the second one.
They do credit her as Mary Shelley in the second one.
I'm going to go out on a limb here with this one. I didn't like it. Did you like it?
No, it was 70 minutes long. And at one point I wrote down, this is my note, 70 minutes, and one of them was this. And I believe it was a scene of just a cart going up a driveway for a really long time.
It's I think what I said to you when we were watching is if you took this same script and turned it into a 45-minute version for an anthology show or something like that.
Yeah.
It would work really well.
Yeah, totally.
But as a feature, there's stuff about it that's amazing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the reason I think as a whole I can say that it's not very good is because I think when most people talk about quote unquote Frankenstein, that classic movie, what they're talking about is The Bride of Frankenstein.
I think so too.
So we're going to talk about why that one is much better. But suffice it to say, yeah, it's not that good. It's
very weird. The script is really strange. They clearly had no budget for anything except maybe the makeup.
Yeah.
The Frankenstein makeup.
Which is the amazing thing in the movie.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff looks incredible in it.
Yeah. But there's a lot of just pure bullshit.
Yeah.
In this movie. And it's really not very long.
And it feels so much slower because of the fact there's no music.
No, there's no music.
At all.
Yeah.
There's opening score, closing score, and that's it. Let's go through the cast for a second.
Okay.
And give some just kind of quick reactions to everybody.
Yeah.
So Colin Clive plays Henry Frankenstein.
He's got crazy eyes.
He's insane.
Yeah.
He's very compelling.
Yeah.
As an actor. I definitely found him compelling. I don't know how good he was.
He was acting in the style of the time.
Yes.
It was very overdramatic.
Right. Now, he plays Henry Frankenstein.
For some reason.
And he has a best friend whose name is Victor.
I don't understand. I don't understand.
This is one of those weird things where, so technically this was based on a play that was written by Peggy Webling. And then it was turned into the screenplay. And I guess director James Whale had a lot of say in how the screenplay would be written.
You mean Ian McKellen?
Yes. Yeah. Destined to be played by Ian McKellen, James Whale. So there's just weird stuff in it. It's so odd watching it because on its surface, it bears almost no resemblance to the original book.
Yeah.
Other than
there's a monster that someone made.
Well, I want to read the description of this movie from IMDb.
Okay. And I'm sure it's going to, this is a classic Hollywood monster movie. I'm sure it's going to be very detailed and tell a lot of information about this film.
I think it'll be important for our listeners.
Yeah, go ahead.
An obsessed scientist assembles a living being from parts of exhumed corpses.
Okay.
That's it. That's all there is. I would say apart from that, this is nothing like the book.
No.
He is going to be married to Elizabeth.
Yes, that is true. She is blonde.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Elizabeth is really stupid in this.
Extremely.
She's very ditzy.
Maybe the dumbest Elizabeth of any of the ones where there is
No. The title's taken by someone else.
I saw your face and I knew exactly who you were thinking of. We'll get to her.
Yeah.
Should we get right into Baron Frankenstein? I want to save Karloff to the end.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
So Frederick Kerr plays Baron Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Your reaction to him is one of my favorite things ever. Can you please give our audience just the cliff notes of your reaction to this man?
So there are two really distinguishing characteristics of this actor who is a million years old in this film.
He died 2 years later.
Yeah, but he would have been born in 1810. He was very elderly.
I don't think he was 120 years old.
He's 150 years old.
Okay.
So 2 distinguishing characteristics. 1, something that you notice in several scenes, he has a giant tumor on the side of his neck that is just something that the actor has. It's not like part of the script or anything like that.
Nope.
Just he's got this big giant boil or cyst or tumor on the side of his neck, and it's very strange and very distracting. And if you Google his name, what is this actor's name?
Frederick Kerr.
If you Google Frederick Kerr neck, a bunch of stuff pops up.
A lot of stuff.
Clearly others were also confused as to what the hell was going on with this man's neck. Second, possibly more important, he's the worst actor I've ever seen in anything ever. He's terrible.
So bad.
So bad. Now, we found an article describing his performance, which was one of the funniest things that I came across in all of our reading about this movie. Can I read this out, some of it? Okay, this is from an article just on like a personal blog by someone named Scott Ross.
We'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah. A word or two must be said about Frederick Kerr, who plays Baron von Frankenstein in a dithery, harumphing manner that must be seen and heard to be believed. With a voice that anticipates Bertrand Russell in his dotage, Kerr gives the sort of unfortunate performance those of us with theatrical experience have all too often either seen or, if we are particularly unlucky, had to work with. A fat, grade A hunk of glazed honey-roasted ham on 2 creaky legs, ad-libbing snorts and mutters and exhalations, ahems and ahs and what's, as if in mortal terror that the stage or soundtrack might actually fall silent for a single precious moment. The monster never gets his hands around the right throats.
I don't think anything else needs to be said.
It's so good.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And accurate.
Yeah.
He's terrible. But then we have one other character I want to mention really quickly, who's probably going to come up more. And this is Dr. Frankenstein's faithful assistant.
Oh, you mean Igor?
No. What?
What?
Why would you assume that he has a faithful assistant named Igor?
Well, because isn't Frankenstein's assistant named Igor, from the book?
There's no Igor in the book.
Surely there's an assistant named Igor, since we've heard about it so many times.
This was something that was surprising to us, like, from the beginning of doing this. Like, I kept waiting to see, like, when is Igor going to show up? I knew he wasn't in the book because I read the book already. So I assumed that Igor came from this movie. And yes, Frankenstein does have a hunchback assistant.
Yes.
Named Fritz. I guess Igor starts here.
Yes.
Here's the quick version of what I found out. So the very first time that I can see that a character named Igor exists in a Frankenstein story was several years later. It's like 1937 or 39 when they made Son of Frankenstein with Basil Rathbone as the titular character.
Yes.
And he comes to Transylvania, he goes to the castle and finds out that the monster is basically asleep, lies dormant, and then it is brought out by this man who is not a hunchback, but he's like, his neck had been broken. Like, they tried to hang him, but he survived, who's played by Bela Lugosi, and his name is Igor, Y-G-O-R.
Uh-huh.
So it's weird. Like, what we know of Igor is like a combination of Fritz from the original movie and a character named Igor from a later one.
And literally nothing from the book.
Nothing.
Not one thing.
Nothing at all. Like, Fritz is there. He makes it all the way to the end of the movie, doesn't he?
No, he gets killed by Frankenstein.
Super dead. Super dead. Like many people in this movie.
Not by Frankenstein, by the monster.
By the Frankenstein monster.
By the Frankenstein.
Well, I want to talk about this monster?
Yes. Can I do... The monster is the biggest thing, so let me just do 2 really quick small things.
Yeah.
One thing that I liked... at one point, Frankenstein is like at the medical college. He's either giving a lecture or he's listening to a lecture.
No. It's right before Fritz sneaks in to steal the brain.
That's right. Right.
So Frankenstein's not even there.
Frankenstein's not even there, but Fritz goes to the medical college to hear a lecture on the brain, to steal a brain. And they start panning around the room, and I'm like, oh, I like all the women medical students. That's really cool. And it was really cool. And then they all started filing out, and there was one that I was like so obsessed with because she was like very Radcliffe Hall. She had like a tie and a jacket and like a long skirt. And she was just very masculine and cool, like medical student. And I really liked that. So if that's something that you are into, the movie's worth it just for that. Secondly, There was a moment when Victor was trying to describe, I believe to Henry, like the subject of his experiments. And
you mean Henry was explaining to Victor?
Oh my God, yes. Frankenstein was explaining to his friend. Whatever. And the friend assumed that what he was talking about was animals that he was experimenting on. And the line was something like, well, that's not so bad. What are the lives of a few rabbits and dogs? And on the couch I went, oh! And I was super upset. So that's what I wrote down. Let's move on to the monster.
I love this monster. I love Boris Karloff as this monster. I think it is clear that there's a really good reason why Karloff's portrayal and why this version of the monster is the classic that he is. He's so compelling. He's so interesting looking. It's such an amazing performance. It's such an amazing character. Yes, it has nothing to do with the book.
Literally zero.
But I think that actually allows them to make a new classic character because they don't really feel like they have to do something like the book.
Totally.
But as someone who wanted to see something like was in the book, it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's really, really frustrating. He has no lines in the whole movie.
Just grunts.
Just grunts and groans. He talks in the sequel.
Yeah, so like we could maybe use this as a bridge to talk about the sequel.
So in 1935, they made The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yes.
Whale wasn't going to come back.
Yeah.
And then they convinced him. They said, no, you got to come back. We got to do this. I was reading about like the history of this movie. This sounds like it was like a crazier history than the first one because Universal suddenly had this hit. And also I should note, like the original Frankenstein followed Dracula, followed the Bela Lugosi one. That was like the beginning of the Universal horror movies.
Sure.
And then they did Frankenstein, and then it was just off to the races.
So Wolfman and everybody.
Wolfman and the Invisible Man and the Mummy, and then they did what they call the Monster Rally. So it's like all of these, like Dracula meets Frankenstein, and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and my favorite one, which is Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh boy.
Which is wonderful, and Bela Lugosi and Glenn Strange, who took over for Boris Karloff as the monster, and Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. It's great. It is super, super great. I love it. But when they were making Bride of Frankenstein, they were like, well, we got this big new thing. We don't know what to do with it. So they had all these different writers writing scripts and treatments. Every single one of them got thrown out. Finally, they convinced James Whale to come back with this one draft of the screenplay. He still threw a bunch out and had someone else rewrite it. But this was what I liked about it. He basically said, well, there's no way I can top the first one. So, and this is a quote. It says, so they wanted to make the second one a quote-unquote hoot.
Oh, God.
And I guess that was the secret to making a better movie, which is that
some of the stuff was funny.
No, it's that it was so out there that it ended up being much more of a classic than the first one. I think the first one takes itself too seriously, and that's its big flaw. Whereas the second one, I don't think takes itself seriously at all.
Yeah.
Like, the characters all think they're in a very serious story.
Right.
But I don't think the creators think that it's a serious story.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about some of the new characters that get added for this.
Yeah.
Think of Dr. Pretorius.
Oh my God, Dr. Pretorius.
Like, that's not a character. He would have felt out of place in the first one.
Yeah.
But the second one goes so much further that he feels normal.
Yeah, the scene where he's, like, showing Frankenstein all of his, like, little miniature people that he's created is bugfuck nuts.
So he is, like, I feel like a lot of the book was then used in The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, like, the whole concept of creating a bride for Frankenstein is literally from the book.
But also there's this idea that Frankenstein has kind of older scientists to look up to.
Yeah.
That's not in the first movie, but it is in the book. In this one, he does have Dr. Pretorius, who comes to him and says, I've been also experimenting with creating life. I know you've done it at a grand scale.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to. I've only been able to make these tiny little people.
Let's join forces.
And it's the weirdest fucking scene.
It's so strange.
Where we meet all the tiny people. He makes like a tiny king and a tiny queen. And
it's so weird.
It's the kind of thing where if you had never seen any of these movies, but you knew, like, well, you know what Frankenstein is, right? And then I guarantee watching this will blow your fucking mind.
It's very strange. Well, okay, so there's that character. Let's talk about the framing device, and then there's another character I want to come back to.
Definitely.
So the interesting thing about this movie is that it's framed by Mary Shelley, the character of Mary Shelley. And she is sitting in a drawing room with her husband Percy and Lord Byron. And they say to her, oh, but Mary, we read your wonderful book, Frankenstein, but what happened after that? Have you thought of that? And she's like, why, yes, I have. Please gather around and I'll tell you the tale. But the funny thing is there's so much stuff in this movie that is in the book that makes the framing device stupid, because I was just picturing Percy and Lord Byron sitting there going like, yeah, no, Mary, we know that part. That's in the book. Do you remember in the book that you wrote? You already told us that.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be the sequel. And also the movie literally starts with like, last time on Frankenstein, because they're showing like a bunch of clips from the previous film.
Mm-hmm. I think this is one of those movies where there's so much good stuff in it that anything that's bad kind of falls by the wayside. Like, I don't blame anyone for loving this movie.
Yeah.
It's super, super fun.
Well,
I enjoyed it so much more than the first one.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of the other new characters. Like, there's this, what is the woman's name?
Her name is Una O'Connor, and she plays a character named Minnie.
Minnie. This is a woman that literally, like, her entire role, I think she's some kind of servant in the Frankenstein house, but basically she just runs around screaming and yelling at people and telling them their business the whole time.
She's a Greek chorus if the entire role of a Greek chorus was just to stand in the corner going, ow, what is this? That's her whole character.
We'll all be killed in our beds. Well, there's one part where she sees the monster. This isn't towards the beginning of the movie. She sees the monster. She runs screaming into town.
After doing like a classic comedy double take.
Yeah, very broad. Runs screaming into town, tells one person who tells her to shut up and go away. And then her response to that is amazing, and I love it. It's like, oh, no one believed me. Well, if you all get killed in your beds, I don't care. I've washed my hands of the whole lot of you. And I was like, yes, you go. That is exactly what my reaction would be. You don't believe me that there's a monster? Fuck you. I hope you all die. Yeah.
She's pretty good.
She's all right.
And then we get the Bride of Frankenstein.
Yes.
Who is played by Elsa Lanchester.
Who also plays Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
But who's only in it as the bride for literally 30 seconds.
Right. I mean, that's like the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And then like the bride is horrified by Frankenstein and blows the castle up.
Everything blows apart.
And that's the end of the movie.
And there's a new Elizabeth who is brunette and a little more sassy.
She's better. Definitely better. And she also survives. Yeah. Elizabeth, like he tries to strangle her in the first movie, but she makes it and then makes it all the way to the end of the second one as well.
Yeah.
I think it's important before we move on. I do want to talk about Sir not appearing in this film.
Yes.
And I know we've only talked about a couple of movies so far, but there is a character who I feel does not appear in these from the original novel.
Oh, very interesting.
Who do you think I'm going to say?
Professor von Trappenstein.
Okay, the monster. The Frankenstein monster himself. It's weird to say this because he is in all of them.
Of course he is.
But he's not.
No, he's not.
Like, that character is not in any of these movies.
I expected this response.
Like, no one has done... There's only one exception that we're going to get to later.
Yeah.
That even comes close to what the monster is in the book. And it bums me out that we have never seen that version of the character.
Yeah.
We've never seen a version that actually feels like the monster in the book. They're all kind of interpretations of the Karloff monster. And maybe they talk more, but they're all still kind of lumbering, dumb creatures. And I don't know, one day I'd like to see the version that's in the book.
Yeah, that would be great.
But let's move on.
Someday.
I just want to end by saying these were not my cup of tea, but it's not the kind of thing where I watch them going, what are people seeing?
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
These are classics.
Unlike some others that we watched.
Yeah. No, this one I think I can completely see why people love this movie.
So moving on to a version from, about 20 years after this, where all of the women do not make it out alive.
No.
This is The Curse of Frankenstein, starring Peter Cushing as Frankenstein and Christopher Lee as the monster. So what would you say your overall response to this movie was?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Fucking loved it.
Yeah.
This is the second time this has happened to us, because when we did our Hound of the Baskervilles episode, we watched a whole bunch of different versions, and one of the ones we watched was the Hammer Horror Hound of the Baskervilles, starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I'd never seen it before, and it ended up being my favorite of all of the ones we watched.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that because this was a British film, a Hammer Horror film, right? Not an American film, it didn't have nearly the same, like, censorship on it that on, like, sort of the sex, drugs, blood, and guts stuff as an American film would have, I think, from the 50s. And I read a little bit about it that said, like, I think this was the first Hammer horror that they did in color because they really wanted to feature, like, the gore.
Right.
And it was gory. Certainly not as gory as some other versions that we watched.
I think I reached a conclusion, which is that for you, my co-host and wife, the level of gore that you are willing to put up with is 1950s gore and nothing further.
Yes. There were some gory ones that went further than I was willing to go. But it also is like, there is really a progression in these Frankensteins in terms of gore. Like, each successive one seems to want to be gorier than the one before. And I feel like the gorier you get, the further away from the book you're moving, because the book is not that gory. Like, people die, but not in disgusting, covered in blood, organs everywhere type of ways. Like, people certainly die and it's tragic, but it's not blood and guts all over the place type of a thing.
I feel like it's the kind of thing where the horror in the first book comes from the suspense of what is this monster capable of.
Yeah.
But the horror in all the other ones comes from, we're going to show you exactly what the monster is capable of.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any thought in your head of what is he capable of. We're going to show you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they did in this version that I think we both kind of liked, even though it was really different from the book, was that they turned his friend Henry into, now I think this is another one where the name of Frankenstein is Henry Frankenstein. They changed his first name. No, he's
in this
Victor.
one he's Victor.
He's Victor. Okay. Well, sorry, I get them confused.
I know, right?
They instead of having him just have a friend Henry, they had him have a tutor named Paul, who he had grown up with. And we see the very young Victor Frankenstein, who is played by an actor who we both thought was amazing. This, like, tiny little man playing a teenage boy. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, all I have to say is the acting in this movie is the best of any version that we watched.
I'm not sure I'm willing to draw that line, but
I just did.
You did.
For me.
You did.
I think the acting in this was, for the main characters, was just fantastic across the board.
Yeah. So we meet little Victor Frankenstein when he's about, like, 14, and his parents have both just died. Oh, by the way, this was also something we noticed. Every single version that we watched starts with a funeral, but it's never the same person's funeral, but they all start with a funeral as an opening scene.
Yeah.
It's very strange. It's very interesting. So anyway, his last surviving parent has just died, and he's advertised for a tutor for himself to come and tutor him.
Yeah.
And there's some confusion about this because he's Baron Frankenstein, even though he's a child. And so he meets this guy, Paul, who ends up, like, living with him for the rest of his life, basically.
Who's also, like, a combination of the professor who was an inspiration for him from the book and also his friend Henry.
Yes.
He's like a combination of those two characters.
There's also sort of an implication that they might be boyfriends.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But wasn't that the name of the professor that inspires him in the book? There's the two professors that Frankenstein meets when he goes to school. There's Kremp, who is, like, the one who says, "What old dumb books are you reading? No, go fuck yourself." And then there's Waldman, who's the second one. He's the one that inspires him.
Right.
So they took the name Kremp and basically applied him. They combined all three characters, the name of Kremp, the character of Waldman, and his best friend Henry. They kind of combined them into one character named Paul Kremp.
Yeah, and I would say we enjoyed this character. I felt like a place where the writing kind of fell down was that there were many scenes that basically the dynamic was Frankenstein saying, "I'm going to do this thing," and Paul saying, "I think that is a poor idea and you should not do this thing," and Frankenstein saying, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway with or without you," and Paul saying, "Well, I think it's a terrible idea and my mind is unchanged, but I guess I can't stop you." And that probably happened 4 or 5 times throughout the movie, and I felt like they could have done with less of it.
It's not perfect.
Yes, it's not perfect.
I won't say it's perfect.
The other thing about the other really interesting, the other sort of standout character note about this version was it had the dumbest Elizabeth we've encountered so far.
She's very stupid.
She was so stupid. She's so stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid. Very pleasant.
I feel like there's more to say about their version of Justine in this one.
Yeah, I really want to talk about Justine.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, I don't think I have much else to say.
She's just there.
She's a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
It's really annoying. Paul keeps telling her, "You've got to leave this house." Because the whole thing is very much like a haunted house kind of horror story where all the action takes place in that one mansion.
Yeah.
And they're like all trapped there. It's very gothic. And Paul keeps telling her, you have to leave this place. And she says, why? And he says, I can't explain it because you're a woman and you're too stupid.
Yeah.
Which is annoying as a viewer today to watch, but like I actually think is kind of time appropriate.
Well, also we then find out. So the story is framed by the fact that Frankenstein is on trial for murder.
Yes.
They sort of, at the end, they just leave him to his fate, Elizabeth and Paul, and the implication is they have gone off to be married to each other.
Right.
Yes.
So they abandon him.
Yes.
Elizabeth, that's all I have to say about Elizabeth.
Yes.
She's in it.
But there is another female character whose name is Justine.
Oh.
And you may say, there is a character named Justine in the book. This is not the same Justine.
She's a servant.
She's a servant.
Yep.
She sure is. She's also Frankenstein's girlfriend.
Yep.
And she gets eaten by the monster.
Yeah.
Super eaten.
Yeah.
Like, I think actually eaten because I'm not sure what happens to her body. Oh, no, he throws her body in the acid. There's an acid bath in this one.
He sacrifices her to the monster, basically, because she's causing trouble for him.
Well, she's pregnant.
Right.
She's pregnant with his baby.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
This is the Hammer stuff.
Yeah.
That I love.
It's really schlocky.
It's really schlocky, but so much fun.
It was super fun.
And I think it's fun in the way that James Whale understood that Bride of Frankenstein needed to be fun.
Yeah. Well, there's this one moment. So the way that we find out that Frankenstein and Justine are in a relationship is like Frankenstein has basically bid goodnight to his friend and his fiance.
I don't think Elizabeth is even there yet.
She may not be.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. And we just like, he's supposed to be in bed or in his laboratory, and it turns out he's in the hallway making out with the maid.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So Peter Cushing,
Yes.
as an actor,
Yeah.
would you say that he's sexy at all?
Weirdly sexy. Weirdly sexy.
Like in everything, or this specifically?
This, for some reason. I have no idea why. The note that I made, so this is the scene of him. There's this one scene that I was talking about before, which was the only truly sexy scene I think we saw in any version of any of this. It was just this subtle little thing of like he's making out with her in the hall and the camera is starting to kind of zoom in and you see him put his hand on sort of her side boob, but in such a natural way that you almost think like he didn't know the camera was actually still catching that. He thought it was zooming in on their faces and not going to see the fact that he was touching her boob.
Right.
But the way that he just sort of gently cups her boob in this sexy way, I literally wrote in all caps, Peter Cushing fucks. Because it was so natural. It wasn't like, this is an actor playing a character grabbing a woman's boob. This was like, oh, when Peter Cushing makes out with ladies, this is how he gently touches the side of their boob. It was really sexy.
I said this before about how much I love the acting. Peter Cushing is the reason I love the acting in this movie so much. He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's so good in this, and he plays the character differently than he plays Sherlock Holmes. He's a fucking good actor.
Yeah, he's great.
He's love him.
If you're looking for something enjoyable, I would say that this was the closest to being enjoyable of any of the ones we watched.
It's just so much fun. There were some notes I had about it. Like, hey, we haven't even talked about Christopher Lee.
No.
Because there's not a lot to talk about.
He's really barely in it.
They cast him because he's tall.
Yeah.
That's why. They almost cast someone else who was taller, but then went with him.
Good.
He's great. I think the costume design and the makeup design is awesome.
Well, they made an effort to go in a completely opposite direction.
Doesn't look anything like Karloff. He's so much grosser.
Yeah.
That I really appreciated.
His skin is just like white and like sloughing off.
Oh, it's great. And then, the big thing that I like about it is kind of the way we find out how Frankenstein develops the technology that he uses to bring inanimate matter back to life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first one we watched where Frankenstein says to Paul or to anybody, this has actual implications for the betterment of the world.
Yes.
Like if we can do this, it means death is not the end.
Yes.
Which isn't really in the book. He does it in the book because he can.
Right.
He gets so wrapped up in whether or not he could, he didn't stop to think if he should.
There it is.
That's what it comes down to. But in this one, he literally says, like, no, I have a good reason for doing this, and this is why we need to figure it out. It turns out, yes, he is completely out of it.
Yeah.
And has no concept of right and wrong anymore.
By the end, he's perfectly willing to murder people.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. No, he literally does murder someone.
He murders Justine.
Yeah. Bottom line, he is the villain of the piece.
Oh, yeah.
And the monster is a monster, but it's clear that Frankenstein is the one who's the villain.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate that. So we enjoyed these.
Yes.
I enjoyed these.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I enjoyed them.
Yes.
we watched a number of other versions, as I said at the beginning.
Several versions. Two of which were so bad that we couldn't finish one of them and you couldn't finish the other one. Yes, that's correct.
So let's just take a couple of minutes and talk about these.
Okay.
These are one was something that I knew about and I planned on watching for the show, but one was something we found out about really late in kind of planning the episode, and I found out it was available on Amazon Prime streaming. So I was like, oh, well, we got to watch this. And that was 1973's Frankenstein, The True Story.
I have 2 notes for this. I'm just going to read these out, and I think this is a really good summation of what the experience of watching this movie was like. Note 1, what in the actual fuck is going on? Note 2, we give up.
That's it.
That's it.
That was it. Like, here's just some quick stuff on this. It was a TV movie. It was original, and this is a reason why we felt okay not finishing it. Like, I don't think we could have accurately critiqued it, given the nature of how it is presented.
Yes.
Which is this. It was originally shown as 2 90-minute episodes, so it was a 3-hour TV movie. Any version you find now is a 2-hour version.
It's just like a 2-hour movie. So there's an hour that's missing because we kept saying to each other, what is happening?
Like, who is this? What's happening?
Why
are they suddenly here?
It was so strange. And it turns out there's an hour that's not there.
Like, it is the worst job I've ever seen of cutting something down.
Yeah.
The job someone did is really, really bad. I will say it does have an interesting cast.
Yeah.
Like, Leonard Whiting plays Victor Frankenstein, who people may know from...
Zeffirelli, Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, the old one.
Yeah.
James Mason is in it.
James Mason.
As Dr. Polidori.
Oh, my God.
Which is a reference to like one of Shelley's friends.
Okay.
He wrote The Vampire.
Yeah.
Which was based on like an idea from Lord Byron.
Yeah.
David McCallum plays Henry Clerval. So Victor Frankenstein and Henry Clerval are in it. But the thing that's fucked up is like Henry is the mad scientist and Victor is the guy he says, you got to be my accomplice.
He's like young and innocent.
And Henry's like older and crazy.
So weird.
He dies and Victor basically takes over the whole thing.
Yeah, Jane Seymour's in it.
Jane Seymour plays I'm going to say quote unquote the bride.
Yeah.
She's the other monster he makes after the creature who's played by Michael Sarrazin, who is beautiful. Yeah. Quote unquote.
Yeah.
Like he comes out, he's a very attractive man.
He's Rocky from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And then he slowly turns into the monster.
Yeah.
He just gets grosser and grosser,
yeah.
I guess for no reason.
We were fast forwarding at that point, so if they explained why, we do not know.
It was at 25 minutes in where I looked at why it was so fucked up, and we found out the fact that it had been edited, and we basically said, like, let's just not do it.
We can't talk about this.
But then we fast forwarded through the whole thing, and there are some
fast forwarded through the whole thing.
No, we watched all of that together.
I know, but I did it under duress.
There are really 2 moments that we found that are just fucking ridiculous.
Bug fuck nuts.
And the first one is when you first meet James Mason.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, he just has these weird Chinese assistants for some reason, just hanging out in the background in a very objectifying way. Not much else to say. Very strange.
But then there's one that's worse. So the whole thing is they create Prima, who is the second monster. She's beautiful.
They create her out of someone.
Yeah. She is really weird and like almost kills a cat and hisses at it.
Wait, because she was Agatha. She was the young innocent country girl. Remember?
I totally forgot.
She got that was the whole thing. She got run over by the cart. That was one of the 3 moments that we had pointed out to talk about.
Yep.
She was like this young innocent girl and very sweet and very kind, and she gets like fully run over by a cart.
I think this is what I was remembering. So she gets run over by a cart and her body gets mangled, but her head's okay.
That's right.
So then Frankenstein goes out and kills a girl.
Yes.
And takes her body so he can sew Agatha's head onto her.
I believe that is what happens, yes.
And then makes a new woman named Prima.
Yes.
And then later, the monster rips her head off.
In front of a whole ballroom full of people.
It's so fucked up.
He rips a lady's head off.
Like not even, he just literally like pulls until it pops off.
Yeah.
And then he's holding a head.
Yeah.
And she's dead.
It's real gross.
And then it does end the same way the book does, in the Arctic. And Frankenstein...
It literally ends in the Fortress of Solitude.
Basically. They're in like an ice fortress and the whole thing caves in, kills both Frankenstein and his monster.
The end.
It just looked
no more need be said.
It looked like a giant mistake.
Yeah.
And then we watched 2015's Victor Frankenstein.
So this was the one that you were able to finish and I was not.
What was the moment when you had to leave the room?
They brought an ape to life as an experiment.
And it was like made out of parts of a lot of different animals. It was made out of parts,
but it was clearly in pain and terrified. And I said, this is animal cruelty. And then it started like freaking out. And I picked up my drink, picked up my glass of wine, stood up, went, nope, 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 nope. And went, nope, 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 all the way down the stairs.
And basically across the house, we had a conversation about whether it was okay with you if I finished the movie.
And I said, it's fine, but I'm not coming back up.
So I finished the movie. Here's the quick version of it. In this version, Igor is the main character. He, again, he's never in the original material. He's played by Daniel Radcliffe, and he is a hunchback in a circus. And he meets Victor Frankenstein, played by James McAvoy, who is playing the character kind of exactly the way he plays Xavier in like X-Men First Class. Like he's just crazy and manic. Manic is the word that I use for this movie.
Yeah.
It is so out there and so intense in every single moment.
Yes. They are clearly trying to do to the character of Frankenstein what Robert Downey Jr. was doing in the new Sherlock Holmes
and Guy
movies.
Ritchie, yeah.
And not doing it well.
Nope.
Well, this is where I'm going to go into my rant on bodily autonomy and consent.
Okay.
Because there was something in this movie that made me so mad, so angry, and especially in light of our sort of national dialogue at this moment in time. We are recording this on a Sunday. The Kavanaugh confirmation thing just happened on Thursday.
Well, the like interrogation.
Yeah, let us pray that we cannot say the confirmation. By the time this comes out, we'll know.
He may literally be a Supreme Court justice by the time this episode comes out.
We don't know.
Which would be very scary and spooky.
Spooky.
I might find out that this joke wasn't funny.
I think it's going to be funny, just maybe sad funny.
It might be awful. Anyway, bodily autonomy.
You'll lose your right to what happens to your body.
So what happens to Igor?
So Igor is a circus hunchback. And he gets rescued from the circus in a convoluted way.
It doesn't matter how.
I don't
know why. I don't even know why you're going into it. Get to the point.
Frankenstein rescues him from the circus, and he takes him to his house. And he is very scared. He's like very hunchback. He's very disabled. His face is painted like a sad clown, and his hair is all matted and gross. And Frankenstein literally grabs him, pins him up against the wall, and jams a giant needle in his back. It turns out he doesn't have a skeletal deformity. He just had like a giant cyst. So actually, if you're into like Dr. Pimple Popper, this is the movie for you. Because he just sticks this giant needle in his back and drains this giant cyst. And after that, he can stand upright because the pressure on his spine is less. But I got super mad because I was like, he's just doing this to him. We weren't even given plausible deniability that he had asked and was told no, but really felt like he knew what was best for him. Like, he just grabs him and does it. He literally doesn't even give him the dignity of saying, hey, I think I know what's wrong with you and I can fix you in a slightly painful but quick procedure. Would you like to be able to stand upright and walk around? And give him the opportunity to say yes or no. And it made me mad.
Yep. That was like the maddest I've ever seen you, and then you left.
I did leave.
So I finished it. Here's what I will report back to you. It doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
This is my big problem with the movie. It's got a really, really questionable screenplay.
Yeah.
And so it's written, I got to talk for a minute about the writer. So it's written by Max Landis, who has never come up on this show before. He is John Landis' son. Mm-hmm. Some people listening may know who he is. He wrote a couple of things. He wrote the movie Chronicle. He wrote the movie American Ultra. He wrote Bright, that like weird Will Smith fantasy cop movie that's on Netflix. So he likes mashing up like genres and stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason why Max Landis is on my shit list is because he kind of wrote and executive produced the current Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency show that's on TV.
Got it.
With Frodo. I kind of can't stand him. I think he feels like he's figured out exactly how to be a screenwriter. And the way he's figured it out in his mind is, well, just be as intense as possible all the time.
Yeah.
That's how this works.
Yeah.
And that's what my brand is. Like, I think he's very aware of what his brand is.
Yeah. Well, I just wrote in all caps, more blood and guts. Like, it was graphic. Like, this movie was like Saw. Mm-hmm. It was gross.
And that's the thing. Like, I feel like gore can happen and still have it be interesting and compelling and fun, which we have from The Curse of Frankenstein, from the Hammer ones.
Yeah.
But this one, it's just gory and there's nothing redeeming about it.
No.
It's just a lot. And he turned, like, the reason I can't stand him is because Dirk Gently, it's a Douglas Adams story. Like, Douglas Adams didn't write gore, but he turned it into an extraordinarily violent, intensely violent TV show that I got a few episodes into it and then gave up.
So I guess we won't be doing that for the podcast.
We won't. I don't want to watch the rest of that. Max Landis is he's just on my shit list. I don't really like anything he does. And
this was no exception.
This was no exception. He's just intense for no reason. But I actually don't really like nearly anything he has done.
Yeah. Well, as we know, I also did not.
Yeah.
I found this upsetting, did not finish it, hated it. I'm ready to move on whenever you are.
I did show you the end, though. And in the end, they do make the monster.
Yeah.
And
immediately kill it.
Immediately, Victor and Igor kill the monster.
Yes.
It's just dumb and unrewarding.
It's so dumb.
And I haven't yet used this word in this episode. It was bad.
It was bad.
It was just really bad, and I hated it.
Well, it was funny because I was downstairs because I was trying to get as far away from this movie as possible. And you called down, "It's over." And I was like, "How was it?" And you're like, "Bad."
Accurate.
Yeah.
So then we watched another one that wasn't bad.
No, it was good.
It was very good.
It wasn't strictly an adaptation of the book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, but it was quite funny.
And it's Young Frankenstein.
Yes, we did watch it.
From Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder. We watched it more to kind of see the context of Frankenstein in popular culture.
Yeah, totally.
And see what this movie incorporated from older ones.
Yes.
So it is very clearly based on the old Universal Frankenstein movies.
Totally.
So Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, which we didn't watch, but that's the one with Basil Rathbone.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see it because it looks like a lot of it was used for Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Not really the Hammer ones. It's just a delight from beginning to end. Gene Wilder's amazing. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't think we need to kind of go into and dissect what makes it funny.
No.
But we did watch it, and it was very delightful.
I love the fact that we were talking before about Igor in pop culture.
Yeah.
Like, if we needed Igor to be in pop culture in all of his forms in order to have Marty Feldman as Igor in Young Frankenstein, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it. And all of the characters, Inspector Kemp and Inga.
Inspector Kemp was my favorite.
I love Frau Blucher. I love all of them.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. And like you said at the beginning, it's really hard to not say Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Because of this. Oh, and that's the other thing about Victor Frankenstein is that it has really weird references to other movies. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a scene at the beginning when someone calls him Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah. That's completely a reference to Young Frankenstein.
And then later he is designing the monster with Igor, and he says, and the head, they're drunk. He says, the head is flat. And Igor says, why? And he says, because I like it. And it's like, okay, that's cute.
Yeah.
It's definitely cute, but it didn't save the movie for me.
No.
Young Frankenstein, I actually feel bad. We said we were going to talk about it, but you're right. Like, there's not a lot to talk about.
No, it's just for context. We watched it. It was good.
It's just a true delight.
Yeah.
And I wanted to at least talk about it for a minute just so that we could talk about Gene Wilder again on this show.
Yeah, so this is what, his fourth appearance?
Yes. By this point, yeah.
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
It's great.
It's such a funny movie.
All right.
Do you want to get into it?
One final film we have to talk about, and that is Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. This is the faithful one, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm very interested to see how this conversation goes because we had different reactions to this movie.
We are not on the same page.
Which is weird. Just to get it out of the way, I think we actually are super close together in terms of where our reactions are. But if, let's say, your reaction to a movie is 1 out of 100.
Right.
And if your reaction is above a 50, you liked it. And if it's below a 50, you didn't like it.
Yeah.
I'm at like a 45 and you're like a 55.
Yeah.
We're pretty close together, but we have different conclusions. What's the quick version of how you feel about this movie?
I thought it was bug fuck nuts, and I enjoyed every minute.
And I thought it was bug fuck nuts, and I did not enjoy it. I thought it was not good and unsuccessful.
Yeah. God, I don't even know where to start.
Faithful. I refer to this as being the most faithful version.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only one that has, for example, the framing device with Captain Walton and the Arctic expedition.
Totally. We see Aidan Quinn
who
again.
Is American for some reason.
Except the actor isn't.
I don't understand. I don't understand.
Well, that gets to the stuff where I thought it wasn't good.
Yeah. Well, that was the stuff I was able to ignore.
Like we do see the framing device. We do know that the monster's out in the snow. Frankenstein shows up. He's sick, and he tells the story to Captain Walton.
And then dies.
And we see his whole story. We see him as a young man meeting Elizabeth, and then
he grows a beard to show the passage of time.
Of course. And then he goes to school and makes a monster, and the monster escapes, and the monster doesn't talk, and then the monster meets the French family, and he learns how to speak, and then
he becomes a gangster.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Like, he starts out as like a New York gangster, and then then William dies and Justine dies and Elizabeth dies on her wedding night, and Frankenstein says he's going to make a bride, and then he kind of does, and then it ends in the snow and they both die. Yes, that's the basic bones of it. It is like the book. That's how it's the same. How would you say it differs from the source material?
Well, sir, this might be a good time to talk about the female characters a little underwritten.
Oh, okay.
That well-known segment.
I feel like the writing of this movie is going to be most of what we talk about.
Yeah.
Execution somewhat, but, well, no, I take that back. Execution is my big thing. Go on, I'm sorry.
So there are 2 female characters in this movie. Well, there's actually a couple.
Yeah.
So there is Elizabeth, who is Helena Bonham Carter.
Right.
There is Frankenstein's mom, who we do see when he's a younger person, which I'm going to come back to. There is Justine, who we see grow up in the house like as a servant. And then there's Justine's mom. And the way that it all goes down is that Justine and Elizabeth and Victor all kind of grow up together. And they also basically, between the 3 of them, all raise little Willie together because his mom died in childbirth.
Little Willie?
That's his name.
Okay.
He turns up dead. And unlike in the book, so the same thing happens in the book, which is Justine is accused of his murder and she goes to trial and she's convicted and she's executed, even though the family is on her side. Nobody believes that she could have harmed Willie. But the way that they do it in this movie is that she never even gets on trial. She gets arrested, and then she basically gets kidnapped by a mob and lynched with everybody watching.
Because, of course, the mob loved that little boy.
Yes, for some reason.
Yep. It's
all very heightened. And also, we are given to understand that both she and Elizabeth are in love with Victor, because they have this very dramatic scene where Elizabeth's like, I don't know where he is. He's supposed to be at college, and he hasn't written. And Justine is like, you should go after him. It's very dramatic. So it doesn't pass the Bechdel test, because I don't believe that women ever speak to each other about anything other than Victor.
But I feel like you could blame Mary Shelley for that.
Oh, yeah, no, you could. I'm just saying, like, you could also blame the writers of this movie that was written in the 90s. But the female characters are really props as far as being worried about they are not defined by anything other than their relationships to the male characters. And I think they made an attempt to make Elizabeth like kind of sprightly and independent, and, you know, she does what she wants, and she has her own mind. And at one point she's like, Victor, I'm leaving you because you won't do the thing that I want you to do. And then he's sad and she forgives him.
Okay, I'm going to get into it.
Okay.
Do you mind if I get into it for a second?
I don't mind.
I do not think the female character is underwritten in this movie. I actually think the writing is not the problem.
Okay.
I think the script is good.
All right.
I think this is a good script. So it was written by Frank Darabont.
Okay.
And just as a quick little timeline, Frank Darabont wrote and directed Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, he did.
Among a number of other movies.
Also The Green Mile.
Yep. He wrote Shawshank Redemption in 92, directed it in 95. This was written and produced in 93, 94.
Okay.
So this was right around the same time that he was doing Shawshank Redemption. He was not the only writer. He was, I think, a rewriter on this. But I think the screenplay is mostly his.
Okay.
I think he did a really, really good job. I think Kenneth Branagh, as a director, did a very extraordinarily bad job.
I mean, I guess the only thing that I would push back on in terms of the writing is that if you're pointing to Frank Darabont as a talented screenwriter, I appreciate that. But the two movies that we just mentioned have 0 women in them.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, but I'm talking about the way that he writes women. This is the female character is underwritten segment. I
just wonder how much of the way you feel about the way those characters are portrayed comes from how they act and not from what they say. I am going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say I think a better performance would have made them feel less underwritten. Because I think a lot of what you get from a character is not just the words they say, it's how they act and how they behave. Mm-hmm. And I think the way the women in this movie act and behave, they are like children fawning over this hero of theirs, and that's Victor,
who also directed the movie.
I don't think that's in the words they're saying. I think that's in the way Kenneth Branagh directed them.
All right, I don't agree, but we can move on.
But do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
You don't have to agree with me.
I see what you're saying, and I agree with that part of it, but I don't agree that it's all or nothing. I think the script also does not do them a good service.
I just don't hold the script responsible.
Solely responsible.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Great. I don't hold it solely responsible for that.
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
But I want to go off on this for a second because I want to read a somewhat extended quote from Frank Darabont about this. And in watching the movie, I had so many issues with it. And then finally later, I looked back and saw how Darabont felt about it. And I was so happy to know that I wasn't completely alone in feeling these things. Okay. It didn't come out of nowhere. So this is Frank Darabont talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. He said, it's the best script. I'm saying this as him. It's the best script I ever wrote and the worst movie I've ever seen. There's a weird doppelganger effect when I watch the movie. It's kind of like the movie I wrote, but not at all like the movie I wrote. It has no patience for subtlety. It has no patience for the quiet moments. It has no patience, period. It's big and loud and blunt and rephrased by the director at every possible turn. Cumulatively, the effect was a totally different movie. I don't know why Branagh needed to make this big, loud film. The material was subtle. Shelley's book was way out there in a lot of ways, but it was also very subtle. I don't know why it had to be this big operatic attempt at filmmaking. Shelley's book is not operatic. It whispers at you a lot. The movie was a bad one. That was my Waterloo. That's where I really got my ass kicked most as a screenwriter. Branagh really took the brunt of the blame for that film, which was appropriate. That movie was his vision entirely. If you love that movie, you can throw all your roses at his feet. If you hated it, throw your spears there too, because that was his movie. I was so happy reading this because it totally gelled with what I saw. Because what I saw was the most overwrought, overdramatic piece of cinema that I think I've ever seen in every single moment. Everyone is dialed up to 11. All the acting is, the camera work, the music, every single moment is as dramatic as it could possibly be. And you never get a moment to breathe in the whole movie. And the one quiet scene that I can think of is, I think unintentionally, the funniest scene in the whole movie. And it's the birthing scene.
Oh, that was so gross. Yeah, it's burned in my brain.
So we have the most... for those who've seen it, the scene I'm talking about is when Frankenstein finally brings the creature to life.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you meant Willie's birth.
Oh, no. Not that one. Not where his mom dies. That was disgusting and bloody and awful. No, that's literal birth. I meant, quote unquote, the figurative birth of the creature.
This was pretty funny.
There's nothing. That's one of the most dramatic scenes in the whole movie.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
No, so when he actually brings the creature to life, it's of course Kenneth Branagh gets to be shirtless. And this was my observation, and you kind of backed me up on this one, which was what?
Well, I wrote down a couple of quotes that we were saying back and forth to each other, which I think one of them was, we said, oh... I think I said, oh, that I could see De Niro's butt. And you said, that's a stunt double. And I said, you don't think De Niro does his own butt work?
But what was the big observation about Frankenstein?
So you were convinced his abs were painted on.
Yep, and still am.
And we kept seeing as he got wet and then dry again and then wet and then dry again that they were sort of coming and going.
Kenneth Branagh's in good shape in this movie.
Yeah.
But it was clear that he was no, people need to see me as being in amazing shape.
Well, the other thing about this scene is that we had seen him previously, like as he was gathering parts for the monster, one of the things that he was doing was going to where women were birthing and collecting buckets from the midwives of their leavings, and the monster is literally floating in. So basically what happens is the monster is floating in this giant tank of liquid, and as he comes to life, he breaks the tank, and Frankenstein goes to him to try to restrain him, and they're just wrestling in this like wet.
He's not even trying to restrain him. He's trying to get him to stand up.
And they both keep falling down because it's slippery. It's not just water. It's like goo. And you turned to me and said, "Now, that's all." And I said, "Amniotic fluid." They're literally basically wrestling and standing up and falling down and standing up and falling down. And the way that it's cut is so strange. It's like they did it once, but they tried to cut it to make it look like it
was taking a while. And there's no music, and it's total silence.
It's bizarre.
It plays like Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton. Like, it plays like stunt comedy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work at all.
It's bizarre.
It's so off-putting. I just think the movie is... I really, really like the script, and I really like some of the things it tries to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kenneth Branagh did a bad job.
Well, it's just funny because you said to me, like, you felt like Kenneth Branagh gives it 100% in anything he does,
mm-hmm.
which tends to mean that you either kill it or you do a terrible job.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tend to agree. I guess all that I would say is that, like, it was super over the top and it was super ridiculous, but, like, for some reason, in a way that I enjoyed.
Sure. Yeah. I don't think it's bad. I think it's unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And for me especially, like, I just really, really didn't like it.
Yeah. I mean, casting Robert De Niro as the monster was a very strange choice.
Like, I'm excited for when we do our, like, 2-year retrospective and we get to talk about questionable casting decisions, because I can't imagine that Bobby De Niro as the monster won't be number one on my list.
He had a thick New York accent, and when he was trying to get Frankenstein to come away with him, the quote I wrote down was, "I will meet you on the sea of ice."
It's awful.
Yeah.
And I love De Niro.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so fantastic. This was a mistake.
It was not good.
It's just, I can't say it in simpler terms than that. They should have gone to the producers and say, "This is who I want to cast. I want to cast Robert De Niro." And they'd be like, "Well, yeah, he's a big star. That makes sense. But we're going to say no."
Yeah, you should cast Robbie Coltrane.
Or Liam Neeson, who's I said.
Yeah.
I think Liam Neeson would be the monster.
British actor who is not De Niro.
Robbie Coltrane's a little...
big?
He's a little portly.
He's a little round?
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson's like tall and angular.
There it is.
And everything. This was like 94 too. So, you know, there are many, many actors, because the monster should be a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
And De Niro, I'm not saying he's not a great actor. I think he's a very, very fine actor when working within his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Like basically the strike zone on De Niro. I'm trying to do a sports metaphor. I just realized that I'm probably fucking it up.
I'm not the person to ask.
The strike zone is kind of small with him. As long as he's inside that, he's amazing.
I mean, I guess
but as soon as he goes outside of it, it's not very good.
I guess you could say that for Branagh as well.
I think Branagh has more range than De Niro does.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
I mean, look, like, here's the deal. Like, we loved Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express that a lot of people didn't like.
Totally.
And that was an instance that he was really trying something.
Mm-hmm.
And in our opinion, he succeeded.
Yeah. I came out of this not feeling any differently about Branagh that I did before.
No,
I think he's great. I love Branagh.
He's a ridiculous person.
Yep.
Like, but in a way that I think I enjoy.
Like, and even though I came out not liking it, I still think people should watch it. A, because it's the most faithful adaptation of the material that exists as a movie.
Yeah.
And also, even in its failure, it's compelling.
Just the way that he directs himself so lovingly.
Oh, yeah. So I think we should talk about something that this does that, because we keep saying it's like the most faithful version.
Except for the end.
Except where it itself is informed by prior versions of the story.
That's right.
That are not the book. So in the book, again, the monster says to Frankenstein, "Make me a wife." And Frankenstein says, "Okay." And then he starts and then he says, "No." And he doesn't finish. And that's the end of The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yes.
But then we get the movie The Bride of Frankenstein. And what's her reaction to being brought to life?
She starts screaming.
And what is her reaction to seeing the monster?
She starts screaming.
And then she dies.
Yes.
The whole place blows up. In this one, okay, Elizabeth dies.
The monster kills her.
On their wedding night. Now, how does he kill her in the book?
Strangles.
How does he kill her in the movie?
Oh, he actually rips her heart out of her chest with his bare hand.
We see that happen. And Frankenstein brings her back to life. He's already said he wasn't going to make him a bride.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't he get Justine's body?
Yes. I think it's a little bit muddled, but yes, I think we're given to understand. Because he needs a heart. Like, she has no heart. Her heart is not in her body.
And he basically, this is what it was. He takes her head and sews her onto Justine's body.
That's right.
And
like her head in her hands, I think.
And she comes to life, and she's all, and she also,
she was in a fire.
Yeah, when he killed her, she like fell off the bed and like her head got burned.
Yeah, so like her hair is all burned off. It's really gross.
So there's this whole scene where Frankenstein is talking to her and they like dance together, and she's a walking corpse.
Yeah, she's not into it.
And then Robert De Niro monster appears, and there's a whole thing. It's like two people trying to get a dog to come to them. And they're like, no, come here, it's okay. And she just gets horrified and lights herself on fire and then burns the whole place down.
Indeed she does, yes.
And she runs off the staircase and dies.
Yes, this happens.
And I saw this years ago, and that's like one of the few moments that stuck with me about just how horrifying that is.
Yeah.
But like the idea that he actually creates another creature, that's not from the book at all.
No.
That's
like the idea is from the book, but not the execution.
Right. The execution of it, that's from Bride of Frankenstein.
Yep.
That's them doing the movie Bride of Frankenstein.
Totally.
Which I kind of appreciate, and especially when I compare that to the way Victor Frankenstein tried to incorporate things from older Frankenstein movies.
Yeah.
This was an incorporation that I thought actually worked. I think it worked for the story. What do you think?
No, I did think so. It was a little bit disappointing in as much as the thing that I was really rooting for in this movie was like, well, at least it's close to the book. And then it got to the end and it was like, oh, this is not close to the book.
No.
But then Frankenstein dies on the Arctic ship, and then the ship turns around for home, and that's the end, just like the book.
How bad was all the staging with the ship?
It was awful.
Like the worst like early 90s special effects where like there are older movies that have better effects than this movie.
Because it was like clearly on a soundstage, and like there were guys getting like sucked under the ice, and the ice chunks were kind of moving, and it was really bad.
And it's all that stuff we were talking about before about it being so heightened and so dramatic.
Yeah.
It just ends. Oh God. It's one of these things where I feel like we agree about how faithful it is.
Yeah.
And we both really like Kenneth Branagh.
It just comes down to how much we personally enjoyed it.
We were 10 points apart.
Yeah.
And just on the wrong sides of the line.
Yeah.
I feel like in order to end, there's one thing we haven't talked about with this movie.
What's that?
That we should just finish on.
Okay.
John Cleese is in this movie.
Oh my God, with fake teeth.
Right? So he's Professor Waldman. He's like the good professor that forms a relationship with Victor.
Right.
And it's again this weird thing where in the book, the idea that Victor could bring anyone back to life, that's his idea. And he executes on it.
Right.
And all Waldman does is he kind of points him in the right direction and says, well, I don't think these old natural philosophers that you're looking at are like bad to look at. I think there's stuff that's good from them. And saying that is what sets him on his path to make a monster.
Right.
In this one, though, just like in the really shitty Frankenstein, the True Story.
He's closer to Dr. Pretorius.
Yeah, like he actually has already started bringing inanimate matter back to life.
Well, there's this whole thing where like Frankenstein is just so mad at the conventional professors at the university, and he's like in the balcony screaming out like, what about Marcus Agrippa? This is the only one I think where Marcus Agrippa gets shout out, a literal shout out. And then he's like, one of your own professors agrees with me. And what's the professor's name?
Waldman.
Waldman is like, what are you doing?
And he just like pieces out.
Yeah.
He's just like, what are you doing to me, dude? Nope. I'm not. He nopes the fuck out.
Yes.
And yeah. And like Cleese is weird in this movie.
I think he was trying to be unrecognizable.
I think so.
And like play a dramatic role.
Like he's got weird fake teeth in. And
weird hair.
A wig. And then Robert De Niro kills John Cleese.
No.
Yes.
Yes. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And that's how they get the criminal's body.
That's how we like hear De Niro's voice before he becomes the monster, because he's just a criminal. Kills him. And it's Bobby De Niro trying to do like,
governor.
Like he's trying to do that. And it's not even, like, you can say, like, you can point at Dick Van Dyke's accent in Mary Poppins as, like, a really bad Cockney accent.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro, the failure isn't that it goes too far. The failure is that it's barely there.
Right.
He just sounds like Robert De Niro the whole time.
Yeah, governor.
So I think my favorite part of this movie is that we get to watch Robert De Niro kill John Cleese, and that's in a Frankenstein movie.
There it is.
I really didn't. It didn't do it for me.
Yeah,
it didn't do it for me.
It did it for me more so than for you.
So I think we should finish up.
Should we do our quadrants?
We have to do quadrants for a lot of these right now.
So many quadrants.
And just as a quick refresher, there's basically 4 levels to the quadrants. We have cared about the source material, did a good job. We have didn't care about the source material, did a good job, which we think is second best. Then there's cared about the source material, did a bad job, which is worse. And then there's the worst one, didn't care,
did a bad job.
Exactly. So let's run through all of these.
1931.
I'm going to put together 31 and 35.
Okay,
Let's
great.
say Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
The James Whale oeuvre.
Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I think they looked at it as an opportunity to tell a story, but I don't think they cared about the source material.
No.
Because there's so much that's missing.
Yeah.
Did they do a good job?
Collectively, yes, I would say they did a good job.
Absolutely.
As 2 movies together.
Like, even if we absolutely did not like either of these, I'm still going to say yes, because when you walk up to people and you say, picture Frankenstein's monster, they're going to picture Boris Karloff.
Yep.
They did a good job.
Yep. 1957.
The Curse of Frankenstein.
Do you think they cared about the source material?
Yes.
Do you?
I actually think they cared more than James Whale did.
Yeah, more than James Whale did, but still not a lot.
I feel like in the James Whale versions, they were doing an adaptation of the play that already existed.
Okay.
Whereas I really feel that The Curse of Frankenstein is an adaptation of the book. It's not a super faithful adaptation, but seeing how much of like the actual character names show up, and I think the actual characterization of Victor is of all the versions we watched, I think that is closest to the book.
All right, you sold me.
I think it was faithful.
Great.
And I think we both agree that it was successful.
It was good.
That's a top-rate movie.
Frankenstein, the true story.
I think they cared. I actually think the person that wrote it cared.
No.
I think they did.
No, you're not going to get me to come with you on this.
You know what? I will say, I think the people who made it and directed it and produced it didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Okay, and did they do a good job?
No.
That is a lower left movie. Then we get Victor Frankenstein from 2015. I don't think they gave 2 shits about the original source material.
No, I do not either.
It's like you took only things from other versions of the story, put them in a blender, mixed in a whole bunch of blood and guts, and poured it on a canvas and said, here's our movie.
Gross.
Yeah, I know, right? It has nothing to do with the book.
And they did a bad job.
Also. So that's a lower left. Young Frankenstein, should we do it?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can do it. It's a parody.
I'll just say this one thing.
I think they cared about the source material because any good parody has to be recognizable enough from what it's parodying.
2 examples that I will give of how I know that they cared about the source material.
Yeah.
1, it's a parody of the Universal stories.
Yeah, totally.
But they refer to Victor Frankenstein.
Right.
Not Henry Frankenstein.
Right.
That's 1. But 2, when they are led down into the basement because Frau Blucher is playing the violin, and that brings them down.
He was my boyfriend.
And Frederick is reading from Victor's journal.
Uh-huh.
The lines he's reading are from the book.
Yeah, okay.
So I think they actually did care about the source material.
Oh, no, I agree with you. And I think they did a good job, obviously.
And then we move on to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, 1994.
So, given that quote you read from Frank Darabont, where he was very, very subtle about the meaning and of the original book and what it meant to him, very insightful, I think he certainly cared about the source material.
Absolutely.
I don't think
Kenneth Branagh did too.
I think so too. And I am willing to say they did not do a good job.
Yay! I was right. Unsuccessful. I feel like it's weird to end this episode and say, of all the versions I've watched, no one has actually done something that I think improves upon the original book.
Yeah.
None of them.
No one has done the original book.
There is a version of this yet to be made that I think could be amazing.
Yeah.
And still terrifying and horrifying that just no one has done.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Nope. I think that's it. That's a lot. We did a lot. It's a lot of Frankenstein.
Happy Halloween,
everybody.
Happy
Halloween.
Ooh, this has been Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @AdaptCast. And if you tweet about the show, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Do you have any funny jokes?
Ooh.
Whoa, whoa. Goodbye, everyone. Until next year and 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.